John White here, and I want to welcome you back to Leader 101. This is Lesson 4. We are excited that all around the world God is calling His people back to the idea of church and homes, house churches, churches that function like small, vibrant families. And the purpose of this course is to help train leaders for those house churches. In this lesson, Lesson 4, we'll be focusing on the word overseer. It's a key word, but I think you'll find as we go through this course, or this lesson, that it means probably something fairly different from what you may have understood in the past. A bit of a review. Remember, the foundation for this course is the New Testament idea that church equals family. Family is the primary metaphor for church in the New Testament. And it flows from that leaders of churches function as spiritual parents, spiritual moms and dads, and we often say parents in the best sense of the word. And part of what we'll be doing in this lesson is unpacking part of what it means in the best sense of the word. What do healthy, godly leaders look like? Healthy, godly parents look like? The passage that we'll be starting from is 1 Timothy 3, verse 1. This is where Paul says to Timothy, it's a good thing if a man desires to be an overseer. So that's the key word. Just a quick comment about the word man, if a man desires. In the 25 years that I was a pastor in traditional churches, there was lots of discussion and debate about the role of women in leadership. My sense, though, is that in the context of house churches, where churches equal family, that's been pretty much a non-issue. It's evident from the beginning that any healthy family is going to need both spiritual moms and spiritual dads. And so when we use the word overseer, we're going to apply that to men just as much as we might to women. The word overseer in the Greek in this 1 Timothy 3:1 is the word episkopos. Sounds like episcopal. And I want to talk first of all about an unfortunate translation of that word. If you were to read this passage in the King James, you would read, it's a good thing if a man desires to be a bishop. So this is where that term comes from. And if we conceive of the church as an institution, as an organization, then you're going to need bishops and archbishops and popes and all kinds of other titles like that. The problem is that's not at all the way the New Testament conceives of church. Again, church is family, not an institution or an organization. What we know historically is that as the church in the first century began to move out into the Roman Empire and had a tremendous impact there, penetrating the Roman Empire, it was also true that the Roman Empire penetrated the church and brought with it not biblical, but Roman ideas about structure and organization. The Roman Empire was very structured, very hierarchical, and unfortunately those kind of things began to infect the church, and therefore we end up with ideas like bishop, archbishop, and various other titles, but that was not so biblically speaking. And of course, that whole process culminated with the Emperor Constantine in the early 300s, who really took over the church and remade it completely in the image of the Roman Empire. But let's go back to that word episkopos. It's a compound Greek word, episkopos. Skopos is just what it sounds like, microscope, telescope. It means to see or look. Epi means over. And so you can understand why one translation of this word would be overseer. That's better than bishop, but I want to suggest that even that translation is inadequate. An episkopos, another way to understand it, is someone who looks over and sees the big picture of what's going on. They are skilled seers. And I'm indebted to my friend Kent Smith, who's coined this term, radically competent attention payers. That's a great term, and I think really captures what I believe is the New Testament value for this word, radically competent attention payers. And so we're going to frame this lesson with that term. And I want to share with you 5 insights about attention payers that will help you to grow in your capacity as spiritual moms and dads, as leaders of House Church. So 5 insights. The first one is this, that attention paying requires both listening and seeing. It means using our eyes to see, but I think implied in that is also using our ears to hear as well. So to do this, we need to be people growing as people who, number one, ask great questions. Now these questions can be internal or external. Internal are questions that I'm asking myself about a situation. And then there are places where we can ask those questions to other people. And I think wise spiritual moms and dads are people who almost collect great questions. I want to share with you 2 of my favorite questions. And I would encourage you someplace in your journal to even begin making a list of questions that are really helpful in helping you to see and to hear what is really going on, to really pay attention to what's happening. Now, the first one is one that I've just learned recently. It's called the focusing question. I've been reading through a book called The One Thing by Gary Keller, and he recommends this question. It goes like this: what is the one thing that I can do such that if I do it, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary? I found myself asking that question in God's presence every day, sort of like saying, what is the most important assignment you have for me today? And I found that to be very fruitful. Here's a second question that I've been using for quite a while, and it's at the top of my list. I call it the prevenient question, or prevenience. The word prevenient, some of you know, means before. And so the prevenient question goes like this. Well, the assumption is that before I show up in any situation, God is already at work there. And so my question is, what has God been doing in this situation, in this person's life, in this group, whatever it is? What has God been doing before I show up, and how do I join Him? Some of you have heard me say that this question literally changed my whole paradigm of ministry. I was trained in a context that said it was my job to show up and make something happen. It's my work. But when I understood this, the prevenient question, really from Eugene Peterson, it changed how I think and how I operate. And so I show up with that question. What is it that God is up to in this situation? What has He been doing before I show up? And how do I join Him in that? Very powerful. And I think that question, by the way, was at the core of Jesus' thinking. One of the most important verses, I think, in the Gospels, and one of the most important verses to the Luke 10 community, is John 5:19. This is where Jesus says, I do nothing on my own initiative. I only do what I see the Father doing. So in every situation, Jesus shows up, and He's asking the question, Father, what are you doing in this situation? I want to become skilled at asking that question as well. So those are 2. There are many more, but those are two great ones. Another part of seeing and hearing, this is mainly on the hearing part, is that we not only ask great questions, but we learn to listen deeply. One of the ways we do that is by restating what people are saying. So if I'm listening to someone and they're sharing their heart with me, what I want to do is restate. It's the old thing of, what I hear you saying is, and I share that back with a person, reflect back to them, and then they can say, yes, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. Or they can say, it's not quite it, it's more like this. So we've set up a feedback loop that you go through until that person can say, yes, that is exactly what I'm trying to say here, both in terms of the content, but also in terms of the emotions. So wise spiritual moms and dads, effective moms and dads, are people who learn how to listen deeply to other people. One other resource that I want to share with you under this idea of both seeing and hearing is the discipline or the skill set called coaching. I'm not going to go into that in great detail, but I really recommend you to take a look at it. My favorite coaching book is called Leadership Coaching by Tony Stoltzfus. It's great at helping us become radical, competent attention payers. So that's number one. Number two, attention paying means that we focus on the individuals in the group. And think about this in terms of physical family, first of all. Good parents, helpful parents, mature parents, understand that each child in the family is unique and different. Each one has their own design, has been designed by the Lord in a way that is unique. And we have to understand that uniqueness and name it and celebrate in each of our children. One of the tools that we think is important in Luke 10 is something called design discovery. Tim Morris, we collaborate with Tim on this. And we recommend everyone in the Luke 10 community to go through his process of design discovery in order to be clear about how God has designed you, your unique blueprint. And as you come to understand that for yourself, you're much more equipped to help your children and your physical family and then other people that you're working with. So again, back to physical families. They understand each child, their personality, the way that they're wired. They also focus on each child in terms of their developmental stages. So, the stage that a 2-year-old is in, maybe they're in that no stage of individuating from parents. Other stages are more about bonding. Each stage has their own unique characteristics. And parents understand where each child is and parent them accordingly. Understanding these things about each individual helps us to parent our children. The same principle is true with spiritual families, with house churches. Parents, spiritual parents, need to understand and see each individual in the house church. What is their design? How have they been gifted? Ephesians 4 says that God has apportioned to each one, as he chooses, the grace for that one. And as leaders, we are recognizing the grace in each one and drawing that grace out. Very important part of leadership. A third insight into attention paying is that parents focus not only on individuals, but they also focus on the group or the family or the house church as a whole. So again, physical family first. Every wise parent knows that you have to have a sense of how the group is doing, how the family is doing. And they're going to be in different places. A young family with just their first infant has just been born, they have certain dynamics in that relationship. A little further down the road, maybe you have 2 or 3 young children. The dynamics of that family are unique and different. And then compare that to maybe a family with 2 or 3 or 4 teenagers. And that has its unique kinds of dynamics as well. And so being aware of the group, the whole, is absolutely critical. How are the relationships going on? Are people getting along with each other? Are there conflicts? Are there issues that we need to be aware of? All of that prepares us to be good parents. Now, transfer that over into the spiritual family, to the house church. Same kinds of things. Wise spiritual moms and dads are learning to see the house church as an organism, as a living thing, and understand it in that context. Is this made up of brand new believers or mature believers, or a mix of both? Are these people that have been together for a long time, or maybe they're just getting to know each other? What are the relationships like? Are there conflicts? What are the strengths of this organism, this group? So these are critical elements, this radical, competent attention paying to the group as well as to individuals. A fourth insight, and wise parents are not only attention payers themselves, but they are teaching their house church how to pay attention as well. How do you do that? Well, one way is that as the leader of a house church, I'm always watching for teachable moments. There's a principle in business called MBWA, management by walking around. And what it means is you're walking around and you're always trying to catch somebody doing something right. So in the context of a house church, same thing. You're watching to see when somebody gets it right. What do I mean? They do a great job of weeping with those who weep. They rejoice with those who rejoice. They bring a helpful teaching. They bring a song. There are all kinds of things. And as the leader, what I will often do is stop and say, what did you just see? What was that? And we'll talk about it. And so they're learning how to see these things. It's a critical element for especially celebrating what God is doing in our midst. but all kinds of great teachable moments can come out of that. Another way that we do this is by something we call the closing round. In almost every meeting we have, every house church, every leadership meeting, whatever, we'll do a closing round. And that means that we ask the question, so what did you see the Lord doing in the group today? What did you see? And then we literally go around the group and everybody gets to speak to that. And different people see different things. And I learn from what other people are seeing. You know, a lot of times we'll hear, I didn't see that today at all, but thank you for pointing that out. That's really good. And so we learn to see by seeing what other people see. And so we do that every week and practice that skill of seeing. One of the marks of a really mature house church is that you have a whole community of episkopos, or episkopoi would be in the plural, where everybody is growing as an attention payer. All right, last insight, and that is that we grow as attention payers as we're part of a community of practice. Community of practice is a group of people where everybody is both a teacher and a learner. Everybody's participating. Everybody's a practitioner, and we're talking about what we're learning as we go. So we conceive of the whole Luke 10 community as a large, giant community of practice, where we're always talking about what we're learning, we're asking questions. But then within the larger community, we have smaller communities of practice. So for instance, every other week, I have a Google Hangout, 2 Google Hangouts, with our regional leaders. And we check in with each other, and we talk about what we're learning and what we're struggling with, and we help each other in that. Within regions, more and more, they're developing communities of practice as well. Within Texas, I know there's something like that. Within California, and so on, West Coast. So we believe that these communities of practice are going to continue to multiply across the country and literally around the world, to the end that we would be a community of people that are growing in our capacity to be really great attention payers. This is one of the qualities, one of the qualifications of great leadership. So, as you can see, adopting this biblical value of church as family and leaders as parents becomes the interpretive key for understanding this idea of episkopos, or of overseers. Really gives us a whole different idea as opposed to some person in a hierarchy who is trying to rule over other people. It rather is this idea of really learning how to see. And we think this is one of the qualifications or qualities that helps produce effective leaders, which then produces a growing number of vibrant, healthy, transformational families of Jesus. That's the Luke 10 vision, is that these vibrant families of Jesus would be multiplying literally around the world. So, in this chapter, I'm going to encourage you to read through the material that we've provided in Lesson 4. And as before, practice the discipline of reading until. Read until Jesus stops you. Stop there. Take that idea or thought, copy it into your journal, and then ask the Lord, what do you want to say to me about this? Dialogue with Him about it, and then share it with your cohort, so that we together are growing in our capacity to be, as Kent says, these radical, competent attention payers. May these kind of attention payers multiply across the world and result in the kingdom of God spreading as we see these healthy families multiplying across the world. That's our goal. Have a great time with this lesson.